Hello, everyone. This is Gerry Brown, and wishing you a happy Groove Day wherever you're listening to the Groove Don't Lie podcast. I hope you didn't miss episode number 1 of John Scarpulla. If you did, you need to go back. But we're moving right along. So here is episode number 2 of the one and only Mr. John Scarpulla.
You remember Westbury Music Fair? Remember?
Yes, I do.
It was the theater that it would rotate.
Yes.
So it was like it was a big circular thing, and the stage would turn. And so here I am doing my first gig with Tower of Power in New York, right in my backyard, like 20 where I grew up.
And relatives there?
Everybody, bro, every friend I knew, every musician, all my family, my cousins, my parents, so the band is on stage, but they had like an area for the pit orchestra. So like if they did like a Broadway production, there was an area where they could put a band. So they put 2 chairs there for my parents. And that's where they sat. And all my, I think a third of the audience was like my friends and family. It was like one of those. And the rest was Tower of Power fans. But, the stage is turning, doing its rotation. And then we come around and we're facing my parents. And I remember the look on my father's face. He was a happy guy, man, but he was smiling. I just remember I never saw him smile so big. Like he just had this smile on his face. So it was a great gig. It was a blur, but it was a great gig. And after the gig, and I'm going to cry.
I got it. Go ahead, man.
My father held me with his big meaty hands, and he's like, I finally get it. Like, it was like to that point, up until that point, I was out doing what I had to do. Like I was out working, I was out, playing, going on tour, teaching, doing whatever I could, kicking and scratching. But it was like, he grabbed me and he's like, I finally get it. Like, you're where you're supposed to be. And then he was like, come on, I want to go backstage and meet the rest of the guys. And it's like, he just grabbed me and he was going to go back and say thank you to like Emilio and those guys, that was the moment that it finally hit him. He was like, holy shit, this is real. Like, this is really happening. It was a pretty special night to say the least.
The parental pride, man, it's priceless.
Yeah.
I know when with different artists, that my parents came, and then they met everybody and stuff, and then they're talking and stuff, and hey, they paid, they facilitated, they pushed me, they paid for the lessons, and I just did the work. They didn't have to like, no,
Right.
No, man, I was in this element.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, with your, with your relatives, and that they see you, and it's like, that's my boy. That's my boy. Look at him. Look at he's going around the turntable and stuff. There he is there.
Yeah, it's funny stuff, man.
It's beautiful. So is probably hasn't happened very much, but is there an artist or artists that you would have loved to have performed with?
You mean that I haven't performed with yet that I would like to?
Yes, that you haven't performed with yet, or or they are maybe no longer here.
Right. So there's 2 parts to that. So my wife Yanni and I, we have this running joke that we've had forever. She's an interior decorator, and she loves to change things, especially when I'm not home. So when I come home, there's a big surprise. And I've had many good surprises, a couple not so good, but a couple of surprises that were bigger than I thought. She's like, oh, babe, we really need to, and I know this is a first world problem. we really need to renovate our master bathroom. You know, it's a disaster, and it's, you know, I just want it to be nice and make it fit like the rest of the house. And so we would joke about it. So when you get the gig with the Rolling Stones and you're making Rolling Stones money, you know, and that was the joke. I said, babe, when I get the call from Mick to go out with the Rolling Stones, you know, I'll be making enough money and we can renovate the bathroom. So it's been a running joke for 20 years. And uh, of course, I would love for that to happen. You know, I mean, most of them are still alive. You know, most of them are still alive, right? And there's still
Yes.
three of those cats that are still around. Um, so it was one that I always wanted to do, and it was always like it was kind of like it started out as a joke, but it's kind of like, you know, one of those things like it'd be great to get the gig with the Rolling Stones so I could make some Rolling Stones money, be on retainer for, you know, 3 or 4 years, pay off all my debts, and have a new bathroom. So, you know, and then my wife would be happy, and happy wife, happy life. So, you know, like it would be one of those, you know, those kind of gigs, you know, those kind of like, you know, those big, huge stadium gigs are, you know, for a horn player and maybe even for drummers, um, they're fewer and further apart or further between. There's, you know, for horn players, there's not as many of them. There are still some horn bands out there that are, you know, that are touring, but those big, you know, those big gigs where you're making, and I don't know what the numbers are, what good numbers are, but you know, like those gigs where you just can't say no because the money's just so right. And, you know, private jets and limousines and, you know, beautiful food, and the chef comes and cooks, you know, vegan meals, and, you know, like those kind of gigs. There's fewer and fewer and fewer of them. And there's still, you know, the, you know, Paul Simon still goes out, but it's only, you know, he uses only one horn. You know, Billy Joel has kind of hung up the gloves for a minute now until his health comes back, and then those guys will go up. But that's another one. He's still carrying horns, still a huge band, really loyal to it, to the guys that have been in the band for the last, you know, 20 years. I know there was some issues earlier on, but you know, McCartney is still out there. You know, there's still a hand, and the Stones are still out there. I mean,
Bones is
there's
still
still
out
these,
there, and
but
Mr. Springsteen.
and of course, in Springsteen, thank you for reminding me. How do I forget that one? I mean, I think Bruce is taking a little break right now too, but I think they have every intention of going back out. But there's really only a few of those left. I mean, would I love to do the gig with Springsteen? Absolutely. It's so many. I mean, I love that music. I grew up listening to that music. Um, there was a time period where I definitely listened to a bunch of Clarence Clemens. I don't think that it's really my style of playing, um, but I certainly appreciated it for the visibility that it created for the saxophone, and for the music that you know, included saxophone players and horn players. Always really dug that. I mean, I've always been a huge fan of Billy Joel since I'm a young kid. I mean, it's some of the first stuff I listened to. Believe it or not, the first solo I ever transcribed was the Phil Woods alto saxophone solo on
Wow.
Just the Way You Are on The Stranger. I mean, I had that. I think I had a cassette player at the time, so I think I bought it on cassette. Then I bought it on vinyl eventually when I had a turntable, and then I bought it on CD. I mean, you know, I might even have an 8-track of it someplace. You know, like it was just that album, The Stranger, was pretty big for me. There was a lot of beautiful saxophone stuff on there, rock and roll sax, and then that beautiful solo by Phil Woods.
Yes.
Um, you know, Mark Rivera has been the sax player with Billy Joel for the last almost 40 years, and before him, Richie Canada, both really good friends of mine, and guys I've looked up to, and guys that have really helped me in my life. So I don't want to steal anybody's gig, but you know, that would be a beautiful gig to be a part of. The saxophone is such an integral part. Um, so you know, like as far as like those big stadium, you know, gigs, you know, there's Billy, there's Bruce, and there's the Stones. Um, as far as challenge,
It's
like
just a handful, you
yeah,
know, a
I mean,
couple
bro,
handfuls.
like I know they were doing some things with the horn section, with Chicago, with the band Chicago, because I mean, and they're still out there. And I think so. I don't think that Walter Parasater, the original sax player, I'm not sure if he's doing. I don't think he does the tour anymore. I think some of those guys have kind of tapped out, from all the years. I think that. I think James Pankow is still there, and I believe the trumpet and sax have changed. That would be like a dream gig for a horn player, man, just to go and play, for a horn player. Like, I grew up listening to all those Chicago albums. Now, I wasn't into so much all the kind of sappy ballads and things that they did in the 80s. But all of that, I just love all of that horn stuff. I would love to do that gig. Just putting it out there in case they need somebody. you know, um, I think most of my career, I focused a lot on like being in a horn section and thriving in that environment. Like, so, you can go play yourself, be yourself, go do your thing and be a soloist. And that's an entirely different kind of playing as opposed to going out in a horn section. So now let's say you're 3 or 4 or 5 guys and you have to move as one. And there's an art to that.
And sound as one.
Right. Yeah.
It's a team.
And phrasing and pitch, articulations, cutoffs, the shape of the sound of each note, the shape of the phrase, where the phrase lies, depending on the music, whether you're sitting back on it, whether you're laying on top of it. And it's like, and I've basically made most of my career playing in horn sections. And so like any of those bands that have horn sections, like those would be the places I would probably thrive the most and be the happiest, because those are the places I feel the most comfortable, because it's like really in my wheelhouse.
Right. Has there been of the icons, and I did not mention, and for the people for the podcast, that they need to know that you played with Jeff Beck.
That was huge. I remember playing, like listening to Blow by Blow,
Blow by Blow.
Oh, like Jan Hammer and Jeff
Me
Beck.
too.
I was probably 16 maybe when I was listening to that. And I forget there was a live album and then a studio album. It just floored me. Who was playing drums on that stuff? Who was it?
I'm trying to remember.
Richard Bailey played drums.
Richard Bailey, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, need to ping him to get on the podcast and stuff.
Oh yeah, bro.
Yeah, yes.
That music. Whatever. Jeff. I never thought. Obviously, who would think? When you're 17 years old, hey man, one day I'm going to get to play with Jeff Beck. Now, I only really got to do a handful of tours because it was really specific. He was doing a tribute to Les Paul, so it was like he was paying tribute to Les Paul basically, and Les Paul had a group with who was singing with Les Paul. Was that Keely Smith?
Mary Ford.
I don't know why I was thinking Keely Smith. But it was kind of coming more out of it like a jazz, like really more of like a jazz rock thing, and it was Robert Norman, who's Diana's, booking agent. But other people may not know. He was also doing Jeff, and Jeff needed a horn section. So it was, I think, I got the call, like, can I recommend people? And then it was like, well, are you available? Like, is Diana going out during this time period? And it was like, no. And Robert was like, no, she's not working during that time period. Do you want to do it? And I was like, oh my God, yes. So he had a trumpet player, but he needed 2 saxes. So, and Chris Carlick was like my go-to baritone sax player. And he was playing with us with Diana. He was also the baritone sax player in the Funk Filharmonik for a while. So it was he and I ended up joining Jeff Beck, and it was like a rockabilly gig. Basically, it was like a rockabilly thing. And Jeff had this connection with this singer she's Irish, but I think she was living in London. Imelda May is her name. And she was like this new generation of like rockabilly chicks. And like this girl just, I mean, gorgeous, beautiful voice, and just sang her ass off, like just a great front person, great personality, and whole thing. And her husband was this guy Daryl Higgum, guitarist as well. So he was the second guitar player to Jeff, and he can play, man. He can definitely play. It was an amazing band, and basically I had to write some arrangements for the three-piece horn section, and we went on the road. And Jeff, first of all, the sweetest guy in the world. Everything that he did, we did. Like it was like, you know, it was always, you know, chartered flights, you know, private jets, limousines. Like, you know, if he got a limo, we got a limo. He had a chef that traveled with us that cooked us the most beautiful meals, and it was like, you know, you could smell the curry, you could smell the food, like while we're sound checking. The chef is in the other room, like cooking us dinner, and then we'd all sit and eat together. You know, if he was going to go to a concert, we were all going to the concert with him. If his wife was coming out to visit, we invited our wives out to come and visit. And while we sound checked, the wives all went shopping during the day to like vintage clothing stores and hung out. He was really sweet. He would sit in his dressing room. So he had his wardrobe, right? And he had like a little Marshall lamp inside the wardrobe. And he would have, he would, many times didn't have his pants on, but he was wearing, you know, boxers or whatever. And he had on his boots. He had like signature boots, but he would just sit in his dressing room. You can't really see me, but he'd be like with his feet up and his guitar, just jamming, like constantly playing, like just constantly. He had this, you know, little pig nose amp, some little tiny amp in his thing. And he was like, so after sound check, he would go and just sit in his room and play and talk. And he's like talking, but it's like still jamming, playing all this great shit. The other cool thing about him, so it would all be set up. You know, for every guitar he was going to play, there were 3 guitars. And so there was, you know, there would be, I mean, the guitar tech worked his ass off. There would be, you know, 25 guitars. That's not a variable of 3. So there would be 24 guitars or 27 guitars, whatever. He would come out first, plug in whatever it was, and play for like 5 or 10 minutes by himself. And we would just all stand there with our mouths open, like, holy shit. Like, just awesome. Making sure his guitar worked, making sure his amp sounded right. And then he would invite us to join him for the sound check. We play a couple things, have some fun, and then go eat curry. Like it was pretty surreal, because he was just like, just wanted to be this normal guy hanging out. There was no like crazy fandom, you know, like people hanging all over him. He was like one of the cats, one of the guys. It was really special. Honestly, he was really welcoming, like into his home, into his life, and onto his stage. You know, it was pretty special. I mean, so like guitar player friends of mine would come. Like we played the Beacon Theater in New York, and I remember like Tommy Burns, guitar player with Billy Joel. He's been with Billy for like 40 years, and he's like, bro, he plays the same instrument as me, but it's not even the same instrument. He's like, it's a guitar, but it's not. He's like, it's just some other shit. Like I, you know, it's like I wouldn't even be able to do that. Like it's some other kind of thing. Jeff's whole style of playing and everything was just so different that there really isn't another guy like it. There, even to this day, there isn't somebody like that. You know.
You know, there's something to the musicians who just play all the time. Because as you mentioned, Jeff Beck, I had the experience of playing for like 3 years with George Benson.
Mm-hmm.
And at any time, even in airports, he pull out his guitar.
Wow.
And he's just playing.
Like using every minute of his life.
He's using every minute of his life. He's just playing.
Yeah.
Or like Vinnie Colaiuta. It's like he's told me stories like he's like reading a book.
Oh, and constantly going.
And you know, doing some exercises or whatever, you know.
I know that, I mean, I don't know all the history behind it, but I know there's a lot of great stories of Coltrane, like literally, like he would play like a 20-minute solo and then leave the bandstand and go out like behind the club, wherever he was, and he would just keep playing while the rest of the band is playing, and then he would come back in and play again. Like it was nonstop for him. The horn was always in his mouth. And then when he couldn't take the tenor out, you know, he had flutes and recorders and penny whistles and all kinds of other stuff that he was always playing. He was one of those guys as well, that it was just this constant thing. Like you couldn't take the horn out of his mouth. There's something to be said for those.
There's something to be said.
You know.
Was there anybody who imparted some, I'm sure some did, but any that you remember from the icons that you've performed with or still playing with that have imparted some words of wisdom or some thoughts?
Well, there's some funny ones. So when I was in Tower Power, many times, not as much in the United States, but in the United States, and then definitely in Europe, and when we traveled abroad, they were always booking like these extra things so that we would do clinics. We would go to like the local high school that may have been like a music and arts high school, or we'd go to the local college and do like a clinic. And many times it wasn't the whole band. Sometimes we would just go with the horn section. Sometimes we would just go with a trio. I mean, they you know, Garibaldi wasn't in the band anymore, but Rocco was still in the band. And you couldn't go and do a clinic without bringing Rocco along, because everybody wanted to meet Rocco. Like everybody, you know, they just wanted to ask him questions. And the funny thing with Rocco is he didn't always know what he was doing. He was just a natural. Like he really didn't, like, so they would say, you know, on that song, you know, you when it got to the bridge, like you played, you played this pattern in this thing. And he was like, really? You're like, I never really thought about it, you know, like he's like, no, did I do that? Yeah. They were like, well, how did you do that? He's like, I don't know. Like he could never really explain it. He was just a natural. But so when we did the clinics, Emilio would make each one of us impart some bit of wisdom. Like we'd each have whatever 2 or 3 sentences, and some guys spoke a little more than others. But Doc Kuka, the baritone sax player, you know, socially awkward kind of guy, but giant guy. I mean, I don't know how tall he is. He just always seemed like a giant to me when he stood next to me. Doc's probably 6'4". He's a big guy. He's probably 200. And, maybe now he's thinner, but he was big, just a big cat. Baritone looked like an alto sax in his hands, but you know, he was just a big guy, and he didn't really have a whole hell of a lot to say. But he would, it just always used to make me laugh. And I've used it before, but it's like, he would come up, step up in front, and he would say, it's better to be ahead than behind. It's better to be sharp than flat. Sometimes you got to lower your standards to increase your odds. And then he would step back and sit down, and we would all laugh because it was just a funny thing. So like, you know, I've actually used that one and made people laugh. I try not to tell kids that one, because lowering your standards to increase your odds. He was referring to chicks, and you know, it was just, we would all laugh because it was just funny, and that was like his little comic. Like it, you know, it was funny to us. It was funny. He was serious about, you know, better to be ahead than behind, and better to be sharp than flat. Like he was thinking about where he sits in the pocket, like where his shit is. Like, it's real easy for that big horn to be behind because it just requires more air velocity. So like he was always aiming to be on top of it, to make sure that his independent parts that fit between the other horn parts were in the right spot. Right. So for him, being a little ahead was better than lagging behind, and it would sound sloppy if he sat back. And then pitch wise, for me, I tend to hear things on top of the pitch. Like you know, some people sit in that A440 tuning. And there are some, like when we play with an orchestra, the orchestras always feel like they're a little under that pitch. They're a little behind in time and a little under pitch, even though I know they tune to A440 as well. It always feels a little flatter than us. So I've gotten so used to playing like with guitar players and they're tuning to A440, but then the minute you put your hand on your strings, they're bending, the strings are bending a little bit so that the pitch is going up probably 2 cents or 4 cents. So I always hear that being a little on top of the pitch, being a little sharp. It's much easier for me to kind of sit in the pocket, being on top of it time-wise, and being a little in that sharp, in that place where I'm above A440. So that was probably really good advice for me, like taking that advice and understanding that was his concept kind of helped me find my place a little bit too. And I've used that philosophy for a lot of my career. And some guys might get, trumpet players are like, you're a little sharp. I'm like, yeah, that's where I hear it. I'll tune down a little bit, like whatever. But that's kind of where I hear stuff, especially when you're playing pop, rock and pop gigs and stuff like that. Like that's kind of a good place to be. Those were pretty cool words of wisdom from Doc.
Well, about the tuning?
Yeah.
I will tell you, Stevie Wonder,
Yeah.
444.
Really?
He would have pianos always tuned at 444.
Wow. That's interesting. And this is something that Stevie has probably talked about, like the keys that he does songs in. Like, a lot of artists, songwriters, they play things in maybe more basic keys because maybe it's easier on, to play. I don't know, but Stevie's material is always in, B major, C sharp major. Like it's never in B flat or C, right, or like F. Like it's never in for the most part, like never in those basic keys. And it's probably where his voice is and where things resonate for him. And there are certain keys for me, like on the saxophone, that just jump out of the horn, because of the tonal quality in that key. And I would imagine that's how Stevie finds his place. But I never knew that about like pitch center being A444. Bro, that's awesome. I never knew that. That's kind of a really cool thing. Thanks for sharing that. That's cool.
Man, well, hey, listen, we got to do this again, but thank you, brother.
This was great, brother. You look beautiful, Gerry, and you sound great. And it's it's an honor. It's an honor to be included. Honestly, man, you know how I feel about you. I love you. But it's an honor to share the stage with you and share like a large part of my life, the last 16 years of my life with you. We've become not just, whatever, not just bandmates. I mean, we're family. We're close.
We are family. We are.
I know your heart, and
I know your heart,
and that's your most valuable quality, and I embrace it. I love you, bro.
I love you, man.
We want to thank Mr. John Scarpulla, my brother from another mother, for being with us on the Groove Don't Lie podcast. Incredible. What an incredible human being he is. Till our next time, then when you join us, keep that groove alive. And we want that pocket so deep, it's down in the lint. You dig? And you know why? 'Cause groove don't lie.